today we have a great project. We're going to take that old door that I turned into a headboard years ago, and we're going to turn it into a faux fireplace. Let's get started. This door is about 100 years old, and I didn't have any other use for it other than to make it into a headboard. And we sold lots of these in our vendor spot. I added some detail by attaching these spindles from another project, a board at the top to just kind of finish off the edge. I kept the original doorknob. That wooden doorknob is gorgeous. And then we hung it on the wall with a French cleat system that is made to hold really heavy objects flat against a wall. That very heavy antique door hung on a French cleat, and a French cleat is basically a board that is cut with an angle like this. It's hard to see because I know that's a shadow, but this is an angle. I think it's 45 degrees, cut on a really sharp angle. Then this board gets mounted into the studs with screws, and it's on there really secure. This one is about 4 foot long. And let me show you the back side of the door so you'll understand how the French cleat works. Okay, so he and I just carried the door out, and it is face down on my workbench. And here you can see the other side of the French cleat. So let's get that camera in there really close. Here's the opposing angle of the same length of board. It's firmly attached to the back of the door, and this angle here sits just inside that other angle, and it will hold a really heavy item very securely to the wall. We've made lots of headboards like this. We sold a lot of them too, and this is how we did it. Alrighty, so we just removed that cleat off the back, and my husband is the one that made that. Do you remember making that cleat, hun?
I do.
Yeah, we did a lot of these door headboards. So let me just show you what things look like at this point. So the cleat was, where was that cleat?
Right across here.
Right across there.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about the plan for how we're going to cut this down into a faux fireplace. My idea, and hun, you tell me if you think this is going to work. We're going to cut, okay, that section and that section are going to be the sides of the fireplace.
All right, so we're coming right down the center here.
So we got to find a center mark. Then I was thinking this here would be the piece that goes between the two sides and connects them. Do you think that'll work?
That'll work.
Okay. So we'll need a cut
right about here. About
there, and then also on this end, right?
Yep, and then we'll cut this.
On that end.
This will be our first cut because that will free this piece up.
Good idea. And then that'll be the second cut.
This will be our second cut.
And then that's going to be the third cut.
Yep.
It's so important to do this in order, I think, so you don't mess things up. Now this section, I don't know what we're going to do with. I'm still thinking on it once we get things assembled. I hope that I can come up with an idea of how to use this. The other thing that I wanted to mention is how we're going to cut it. So my husband could cut this on a table saw, and that's what he suggested. And I'm not going to say that we won't do that, but I want to show you that it can be done with a circular saw, which is a smaller tool and not as cumbersome. And in my little workspace, I mean, you can see this is my workspace. I don't have room for a table saw. So we're going to do it with a circular saw, right, hun?
Yep.
Okay, even though he's not crazy about doing that, we are. Okay, so I don't like measuring, and I don't like splitting measurements like 2 3/4 and half is such and such. I hate doing that, so this is what I do. So don't laugh at me. I know this is not the technical way to do it, but this is how I do it. If you're good at measuring, go for it. But the first measurement that I need is this center of this area, and then of course the center of the other areas I just showed you. So I'm going to find one edge here. Hope you can see that. And I'm going to take a piece of paper, and I'm going to line up the edge of my paper with the edge that I just found. That takes me over to this. If I run my finger, it makes like a little crease. I know this is not the proper way to do it, so if you want to do it the proper way, go ahead. I'm just showing you the way I do it. Now I'm going to take this edge that is straight against the edge of the board, and I'm going to fold it over to the edge that I just made with that crease. And fold it down. That's my center. No measurement, and I can be sure that's where the center is. So I'm going to do that for this board, and this one up here. You can't see that, but it's up here. I'm going to do all my measurements just like that, and then I'm going to draw straight lines, and then we're going to cut it. All right, so here's the little electric fireplace that we like to have in our bedroom. It just kind of heats up the room. When we have our big fireplace going out in the living room, the bedroom gets really cold at night. So we like to have this in our bedroom, and that's where this fireplace is going to go. You can see it's tiny. Like, how big is this thing? How wide is that, Steve?
15.5 at the legs, and that's the widest portion.
All righty, how tall is it?
Yep, about 18 inches tall.
All right, well, let's take those numbers out there and let's see how it looks compared to what we have for our faux fireplace. All right, so we've got the pieces all cut. You see the two side pieces, and this is that initial piece that I wanted as the piece between. Well, that makes it really big. I mean, this area right here from that edge to that edge is going to take up more space in the bedroom than I want to do, so let's try another option. Okay, so we just went ahead and rethought everything. What are the measurements that we have now?
So the legs on the fireplace are 18.5, and this is just under 19, so we should be
Perfect, perfect. What is the width of the whole thing?
So we cut some down, makes it a little over 45 and
Perfect. So let me just tell you what we did. This is the section. There were two sections like this. We cut it down so that it's even on all sides. That was Steve's idea, and I agree with that. We also cut off, remember there was excess here. He's like, yeah, it needs to be symmetrical all the way around. So we cut the excess off of all that, except for the bottom. I like it being thicker down at the bottom. I just think that that looks good. So now I'm going to assemble this, and while I'm assembling this, I'm going to think about what I'll do for the mantle. We've spent the last hour trying to figure out how to configure this thing, and here is an idea. Hang on, we're going to get to that one in a minute. For starters, my husband found a gorgeous piece of oak live edge wood. That's going to be the mantle. He has lots of wood over there. He's cut this wood himself from our woods. He has like one of those saws that cuts lumber. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, that's going to be the mantle right there. Then to add a decorative element to this part of the fireplace surround, we came across an old washstand harp that we have. Yeah, I have furniture pieces laying around. We used to make things out of it. This was a really pretty little thing that we had made. I'm not going to go down that road. But what we've done is we've already separated the pieces into sections, and we've taken the decorative part off. You can see that. And then we have like these two leg things. So honey, do you mind? Let's lay these pieces out. Well, hang on. Let me get right back to you. And this is kind of the idea of what we have come up with. We've separated the harp legs, and I've put one on this side here. You can see that pretty little thing. By the way, this is from another project that we had made. I'm going to get rid of all that. Maybe sometime I'll show you how I made that project. Anyway, that kind of is a decorative element on that side. And then on this side, we have the other one. That's going to be pretty. And then the center is going to be right underneath. Now, the gap that you see right here, we're going to cut pieces of scrap lumber, and we're going to fill this gap so that this whole thing will look like one piece all the way across. And yeah, I think that's going to be really pretty once it all gets painted out. So to make the harp work together, I have these two sections, that one and that. Then I have that middle piece. What I need to do is bridge the gap here. So I'm using a piece of paper, and I'm going to make a template here, and my husband's going to cut out a piece with a jigsaw. And I'm going to try to replicate this curve over here on this design. So far I know I've got to go from this edge over to this edge. So there's that issue. And let's just see what I can come up with. Okay, so let me show you what I did here. I've got the size that I need. It's this piece here. You just saw me mark that out. But I wanted to get the same curve as what was on this center piece of the decorative part. So this curve right here, I just kind of lined it up where I thought it might look good, and then I traced around and I got this design here. So I think that's going to be the look. It'll come straight down here to match up with the other side, and then here, and then it'll curve around, and that, and then I'll mirror this, and he can cut two pieces for me using a jigsaw. I've turned the boards around to the back side, and I just want to show the old paint on it. I mean, the back side's just as beautiful, but look at these beautiful colors here of the original blue, the original ivory and white. I'm contemplating if I should keep this side exposed and go with the original paint finish, maybe just seal it. I kind of like that blue showing through. Or flip it to the other side that I'd previously painted, which is like this, which would still allow me to create a chippy white paint finish. In fact, if you have a base color as black and then you paint white over top and you chip it off, it just looks amazing. Kind of like what I already had here. So I'm trying to make a decision if I should go with this look and white paint and make it super chippy, or should I stick with this original color because it is kind of pretty. The blue is not exactly what I'm going for, not that shade of blue. I love blues. But then again, I like having the original color. Oh goodness, I need to make a decision because the next step is to mend these, or join these pieces. And this is how I'm going to do it. These are mending brackets. You get these at the hardware store. What I'll do is I'll straddle the seam right here where they come together, and I'll have 2 screws on each side, and that'll hold the whole thing together. I've got 2 there and then 2 here as a way of getting this whole thing started. But I have to make a decision about that, about what side to show, and goodness, now I'm having a hard time deciding. We'll see what I come up with.
Ever vigilant. That's it.
It's the next day and we're continuing to work on the decorative part for this fireplace mantle that we're doing. And I wanted to show you what we had to do here. So you can see here, this is the leg, the arm of part of the washstand harp. That's the centerpiece, and then that is the other arm to the washstand harp. Now, if you're not familiar, that would have rested on the surface of the washstand. There would have been a bar that stretched from here to there for a towel to hang on, and this whole thing is called a washstand harp. Well, for my fireplace, it wasn't wide enough. So my husband cut these pieces here, and we traced out the same shape that it had on the original piece. He cut that out with a bandsaw. We have it glued, and then we have it screwed in here. So this is like one whole assembly that we have taken apart, added these pieces here to make it wider on both sides so that it's symmetrical on both sides. And then I have it in this really big bar clamp. So I put the glue on first, and then I tightened up the bar clamp so that I had everything all nice and tight together. And then I drilled a hole at an angle so that it would go through here and into here, and put a long screw in. I didn't film that part. But I'm going to let this sit for several hours or maybe overnight before I get back to it. I'm going to try to get back to this afternoon. I wanted to use milk paint on this faux fireplace because it really does create an authentic, chippy, old, vintage kind of feeling to any piece. The color Ironstone is one of my favorites, mostly because of the name, but also the color is just outstanding. So you mix this dry powder in a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 part powder, 1 part water, and then you mix it up and you let it sit for a few minutes. And in the meantime, I found the audiobook that inspired this project. It was by Jane Austen, called Emma, and every room in the homes in this book had a fireplace in them, and I just decided I needed a fireplace. So anyway, I put the first coat of milk paint on, and by the way, it always looks rough the first time around. I let it dry, and then I went to the decorative part of this faux fireplace. I had to fill the holes from that section of wood that we added to extend it. And then I wanted to stain it so that I could create a chippy finish on it with an old wood look underneath. I chose this dark antique brown stain, and then I painted over top of that in Miss Mustard Seed's milk paint called Grain Sack. You see here I'm using wax as a resist, and the paint won't stick to that wax, and it'll help the chippy part of this go really smooth. You can also see that I'm dabbing on the paint really thick. I want it to look like it's been painted over layers and layers and layers. And for me, this is the best way to do that. I also like to use a heat gun to speed dry the paint, and it gives us this crackly finish that is just, oh, so good and vintage looking to me. The second coat of milk paint really does make a difference, don't you think? And then back to the decorative part, I'm using the flat edge of this knife to scrape off and create a really beautiful chippy finish. You see that paint just chips off. And you can also see the two layers of color, that ironstone and the grain sack, just really do create a layered finish. Look at that. Oh, that is my favorite. Tell me down in the comments, do you love a chippy paint finish? This is one of my all-time favorite looks for our home, and that's how I achieve it. And to seal it all in, I'm using Dixie Belle's clear coat in flat. This will create a waxed look, but the durability of an acrylic. It's really a great way to seal in all the chippy goodness that I just created. While that clear coat is out, I'm going to go ahead and seal the top part of our mantle. This is the mantle that we're going to be using, and I have another plan for it, so stay tuned. But this part, this clear will just seal it. I run my finger underneath to make sure I don't have any drips. To create a vintage background for the little faux wood burning electric fireplace that we have, I wanted to create this little vignette kind of thing. So I cut a piece of glue on, and then I painted it. And then I took some pages from an old hymn book that we got at an auction. It was falling apart, so don't worry that I'd taken the pages apart. It was already coming apart, and I think that this is a great way to show off those pages. So I'm using Dixie Belle's clear coat as a glue. You paint it down on the surface, you put the paper over top of that, and then you paint over top of that, and it will seal it all in, and it's a nice flat finish. This is a really great way to create a vintage and old look to a solid piece of wood like this backdrop. Now the mantle is beautiful as is, but I wanted to tone down some of the warmer tones in it, so I grabbed Miss Mustard Seed's white wax and I worked it in. Now it's not going to soak into the wood completely because I've sealed it, and that will give me a little bit more control over this white wax. If I want more, I can double up the coat, but it's really hard to take wax off of raw wood, so a good way to do that is to clear coat it first. So I just used a little chip brush, I really worked it into the grooves, and then I wiped it back with a blue shop towel until I had the look that I want. And you can see it really does lighten those warm tones. All right, we have this whole thing together. Let me show you. So those screws hold on the decorative pieces that we added on the front. And then you see there that my husband attached the French cleat on the back of the fireplace. He also attached the French cleat on the wall. So that's how this is all is going to hang on the wall. You can see there that angle. They sit inside each other. You saw that at the beginning. And here's the mantle. You can see that we attached it directly straight down into the door. Sorry for the blurry camera there. But we drilled holes, added screws, and then we used a dowel rod to fill that hole. And it just makes for a very clean finish. You don't see the screw holes. You can see there that little dowel, and that just looks really good. And that mantle is secure to the whole door. I'm loving how this is looking. The wood is perfect. It's a grayish kind of white tone. It really is lovely. I can't wait for you to see the front of it. For now, this fireplace is just in a spare room leaning against the wall because I have plans for it going in our bedroom, but I'm just not ready for that yet. I do have a bedroom makeover coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. But here it is all assembled. It's so pretty. Now, I don't have the little black fireplace in front of it yet, so you'll have to watch the bedroom makeover video for that. But look at this. Isn't that so pretty? And then I use that extra piece down at the bottom. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and click the like button, and we'll see you next time.